Welcome to TYT Sports. Ben Mankewicz here. The NFL season opened Thursday with the Packers going to Seattle to play the Seahawks. After the game, a 36-16 win by the Seahawks. Questions were asked. Jason Rubin, our producer, has one of those questions. Jason?
Are the Packers done, Ben?
Jason, thanks very much. It's a ridiculous fucking question. The Seahawks looked really good last night. The thing to take away from that game is that the Seahawks are ready to play, and one game in with no injuries, don't appear to have any kind of hangover. We have seen in the last 9 or 10 Super Bowl champions, 4 of them have missed the playoffs. The rest of them have been knocked out by the second round of the playoffs. So it's, over the last decade, been very hard to make a deep run after you win the Super Bowl. That is a symptom of the number of injuries in the NFL, the randomness of the NFL, and of course the salary cap, where when you win, guys appear to do very well, and when their contracts are up, they want big deals, and there's a cap, and they go somewhere else. So it's very hard to keep a roster together. The Seahawks appear to have what the Patriots have had, which is a structure more than a team, and a structure where different players can fit into different parts, and it's the Patriots and the Steelers to a lesser extent. They feel like machines that can exist for a long time, and the Seahawks they have that feel too, certainly with Pete Carroll. But mostly, keep in mind that this 36-16 win by the Seahawks is not out of character for what the Seahawks have done over their last 2.5 years at home. They have now won 18 of their last 19 games at home. We all know it's the toughest place to play in the NFL. It proved to be again last night. An incredibly hyped up, motivated crowd. They're always motivated. I don't know that they're more motivated or more hyped up, but the idea of their first chance to welcome the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks seemed to work for the fans and work for the team. The Seahawks have won 18 of their last 19 at home. They have outscored their opponents in those 19 games 558 to 253. Their average margin of victory, 16.1 points. They beat the Packers by 20. They really beat them by 13. That game was over at 29-16, and instead of getting a first down at the end, they got a touchdown. Look, when Aaron Rodgers got that last touchdown to make it 29-16, they went for 2 that could have made it 29-18. Look, the Packers weren't going to win that game, but they weren't run out of the stadium. So are the Packers done? No. The only takeaway, losing in Seattle is never a measure of how good or bad you are. What it's a measure of is the Seahawks. And taking that Seahawks team that dismantled the Broncos in the Super Bowl and now adding what looks to be one of the most dynamic players in the NFL in Percy Harvin, adding him to the offense, and Pete Carroll coming from college, a willingness to college up that offense with the fake sweeps and the pumps and the misdirection. It looks like an SEC game. And they burned Clinton Dix on one of those plays with the pass to Ricardo Lockett that just everybody seemed wildly faked out. Harvin with 100 rushing and receiving yards. He goes up to 160 if you add in his kick returns. This is one of the most dynamic players of the NFL, and adding him healthy to that Seattle offense, all that's going to do is create bigger holes for Marshawn Lynch, who looked like Marshawn Lynch. I still can't believe he's not 34 years old, but he's young and he would seem to have a year left. But this is 1/16 of the season. And the Seahawks are, as every NFL team is, a couple of serious injuries away from appearing vulnerable. But this is a team that you can probably, even with their incredibly difficult schedule in the NFC West and having to play the AFC West this year, this is a team where realistically you think they're probably going to go, a good chance to go 8-0 at home, probably at minimum 7-1. But even if they go 6-2, if they go 4-4 on the road, that's 10-6, and they probably go to the playoffs, especially given that the other teams in their division have to play the exact same difficult schedule. Hard to believe the Seahawks don't win 11 games this year, that they don't win 7 at home, maybe 8 at home, 4 or 5 on the road. But I'm doing exactly what I'm telling you not to do, which is take too much from game one. What we know is the Seahawks are dominant at home, and that has not changed yet.
The Packers did suffer an injury. Eddie Lacy confirmed had a concussion in the fourth quarter. Another takeaway, as you kind of alluded to it before, the question was for discussion, of course, but this very much could be the Packers might be stepping into, CenturyLink Field in the playoffs in the divisional round or the NFC Championship game, 16 games down the road. But Aaron Rodgers marched down the field when it was 29-10, I believe, and in 2.5 minutes put together a drive. He didn't throw it once to the right side of the field, which is where Richard Sherman is occupying. There was no interceptions by Richard Sherman, anything.
Rick. I'm sorry, it was a dumb point, so I thought it was Ricky. No, it wasn't a dumb point, I'm kidding. But it's, look, with 11 minutes to play, the Seahawks allowing Aaron Rodgers to go the length of the field to get that touchdown, it's not the same as letting him go the length of the field if it were a 19-10 game or a 16-10 game. It was 29-10. And James Starks did some work on that drive, too, running the ball, which is a sign that the Eddie Lacy concussion isn't the end of the world. An injury to any running back who isn't LaShawn McCoy or Jamal Charles or maybe Adrian Peterson isn't the end of the world for that team. The nature of the NFL has changed right before our eyes. You have to be able, especially the teams that already do it, that have quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers. These are vertical teams, and James Starks is a totally competent backup. And if Eddie Lacy is out for a few weeks with a concussion, the Packers, my hunch is they'll be fine, especially when they're home. To your first point, the thing that the Seahawks have is a dominating defense and the potential to go 7-1 or 8-0 at home, which means they have an easy chance to go 11-5 or 12-4 or even 13-3, which means they have a great chance to host the playoffs at home like last year, and I don't think you can beat them there, which means they get to go back to the Super Bowl. So that's what everybody is, barring something weird, which is we all know can happen in the NFL. But the Seahawks' plan is to continue to be dominant at home, and that enables them to get those 2 home playoff games, and they become incredibly hard to beat. And it appears, 1 game in, and it's only 1 game, that formula is in place again this season, that they've cooked it up correctly. The Seahawks are, obviously, you don't have to be an expert NFL analyst to look at that and think that's the best. They were the best team in the NFC last year. They got a little bit better. They already had young defenders. They haven't been hammered by having to pay those guys under the cap yet. And they have a more confident third-year quarterback who is now racking up starts, who doesn't make any mistakes ever. He is like the Troy Aikman of his day. He plays differently, but that's the quarterback he reminds me of. Not flashy, doesn't put up big numbers, never makes a mistake, and has enough big plays in him to make a difference. They're healthy, and they added this dynamic threat on offense, and that makes them incredibly dangerous and perhaps better than last year. But they're 15 games left.